Since 2012, AI and neural networks in particular have been on a really big roll. It seems like they're trying to solve just about every problem in the world, including full self-driving. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and predict that we're nearing the end of this particular golden age, and there's going to be a retrenchment in AI in the near future for several reasons, and Tesla actually indicates exactly why this is happening. Let's take a look. For those of you interested in investing, check out Webull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I know I'm wearing this shirt for the third time in a row, but there's actually a reason. Number one, this entire episode is basically speculation, so it's speculation time. Number two, it finally outside decided to get rather cold last night, so it's a little bit chilly in my studio this morning, which is really nice. It's been a very long, hot summer in Georgia. So anyway, we're finally getting towards something that's a little bit cooler. I'm sure everyone in the north and in other latitudes is probably like, screw you, but I appreciate the fact that it's gotten a little cooler because it's been very, very hot. Also, go Dogs, #1 in the country. Nice. Beat Kentucky yesterday. And I also want to touch on a couple of things real quick before I get into the main topic of the video. Number one is, I don't know if you've seen this, but Elon Musk was actually at a meeting with VW's sort of executive suite or management suite just a few days ago. And that's pretty remarkable to have the CEO of the main competition be in the meeting. Apparently, Herbert Diess, who's the CEO of VW, called Elon Musk in and didn't tell anybody else. So there was quite a bit of surprise in the room when he came to have a chat about it. Anyway, if you're interested in a video on that topic in particular, I would be happy to do that. But it definitely indicates that at least Herbert Diess understands what's going on. Volkswagen had a very, very bad month in China, actually an entire year in terms of EV sales in the United States. They're doing pretty well in Europe at this point, but they've got to see the writing on the wall, right? The ICE sales are going down rapidly. They're not selling enough EVs because they're not making compelling enough products. There's a lot of Chinese car companies that are making really excellent EV cars right now, and China in particular is going to be a huge nut for VW to crack because they're basically losing market share incredibly rapidly in China, and they don't have a clear path towards getting that back again. So anyway, I think it's very revealing that Herbert Diess had Elon Musk on a conference call with this meeting. That demonstrates, number one, the fact that they're friends, and that's really cool, but number two, the fact that VW, or at least he, is recognizing the fact that they are in really, really big trouble and they need to really take some serious steps to try to pull the bacon out of the fire. Is that what whatever it is, whatever that metaphor is. So anyway, there's that. The other thing I wanted to mention really quickly is that on Friday, I'm going to be doing a talk, a kind of colloquium where I'm going to be talking about my business, which is actually AI related. And it's going to be available on Zoom. I'm going to put the link in the description. If you're interested, what you need to do is go to the website and fill out a very, very brief form. Basically, just your name and your email address, and submit that, and you'll get the Zoom link. I can't put the Zoom link directly because the university is terrified of Zoom bombings, which is where people, get in there and then bots or something like that attack. So anyway, I have to do it a little bit more carefully, but if you're interested, we'll send you an email directly back as soon as you fill out that form, and that way you can watch the colloquium if you want to. I think it will be recorded as well, but I'm not exactly sure. So anyway, if you're interested, it's 12:40 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, which I think is GMT -5, whatever that is. But anyway, at 12:40 p.m. East Coast time in the United States, so whatever time that is for you, it's live and you can take a look if you want to. All right, so enough babbling on about other things. I will do a table of contents so you can skip to this if you're not interested in the other stuff. But anyway, on to the topic at hand. So as I said in the intro, there has been a real golden age of AI, and in particular deep neural networks, since about 2012 when Jeff Hinton and others kind of revealed the power of the deep neural networks. And by the way, these things, multi-layer perceptrons, have been around. They've been here since the earliest days of AI in the 1950s. So there's just an evolution of that. And I want to take a moment to just sort of talk about the history of all of this for a moment to reveal why I feel like we're kind of nearing the end of this last golden age. So essentially, there's been sort of decadal things that have gone on, somewhere between 10 and 20 years,
of huge advances in artificial intelligence and everyone predicting it was going to solve the world and we were going to have AI bots, in superhuman intelligences around just next year or something, right? It's going to happen really fast. This happened in the 1950s also. We had these AIs that started solving chess games and checkers games, and we had things that could beat people at tic-tac-toe, and everyone said, oh my gosh, AI is going to come out and it's going to be smarter than human beings very, very soon. And that leads to the 1960s, where we have movies like 2001, where HAL is a bad AI, but clearly a very intelligent being with agency in the movie. But of course, what happened was in the 1950s and early 60s, there was all of this hype about it. And even a lot of the researchers thought that they were making extreme progress and that, essentially what was going to happen was the trend was going to be exponential and we were going to keep learning at that rate. But by the 1970s, things had sort of collapsed and AI had sort of fallen back in on itself. And everyone at that point said, and I remember this because I was a kid then, everyone said AI was never going to make any progress. It was a complete fiction and nothing was going to happen. So there was sort of a big boom in the 50s and the early 60s. There was a bust in the 70s. Come the 80s, there was kind of like a little bit of a boom that happened again. And that was, the neural networks, computing power got a lot more powerful, right? And we had personal computers and we had things with a lot more memory and a lot more processing power. And suddenly we could process things like neural networks, but particularly other things like still more logic-based, but also starting to do machine learning searches and things, which became more popular in the 80s because we had more data, we had more processing power, we had more storage, etc. So again, there was like a little mini boom that happened in the 80s where people said, oh, this is going to happen again. Cool, we're finally going to get there. All of this is going to work. Neural networks were the kind of redheaded stepchild of that group. People didn't think that they were going to work particularly well at the time. And it was true because basically, Jeff Hinton and those guys were working at this time on these things and figured out back propagation and all sorts of other crucial things that allowed the boom of the 2010s to happen, but they just simply didn't have enough data or processing power at the time to make it actually functional. But anyway, we had another boom in the 1980s, and then there was another collapse into the 90s and into the early 2000s where people said, nah, this is not going to work again. And again, when we got to 2011, 2012, where suddenly we had enough processing power, enough memory, and really in particular, enough digitized data, that was a crucial thing that didn't exist before. But with that, we had the ability to actually train deep neural networks, to go from simple multi-layer perceptrons to deep neural networks and to really make inroads into the things that people thought, decades before that we were going to be able to do. We've been able to do it, right? And neural networks have had a huge effect. They affect everything from our communication with like our Alexa devices or our Siri devices, things like that, to Alexa just went on. I said that and the thing like lit up and it was like, yes, what's going on? So anyway, it's amazing, right? It recognizes that. It recognizes natural language processing. It does image processing. Google searches and other searches, Bing searches, etc., are all sort of based on all of this deep learning. And of course, we've got Tesla with its full self-driving really, really pushing the boundaries, as well as many other companies. So this is great. Golden age, exponential growth in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I've got a degree in it now, right? So why would I be kind of naysaying or downplaying the possibilities of artificial intelligence in the near future? Well, the reason why is for several reasons. I think that we may be approaching the current limits of our technology, and that really matters. And actually, there are pretty serious societal issues involved with this particular boom-bust cycle, and so I want to really touch on that. But the first thing I want to talk about is energy usage. So as you might know, we need bigger and bigger and bigger computers to be able to do these really massive neural networks, right? So we've got Tesla, I think they say they have about the 5th most powerful artificial intelligence learning computer on the planet right now with their current version of their hardware and software. And then of course, Dojo is rolling out with its new Dojo chip. And I did a whole bunch of stuff on AI Day, so you can definitely check out those videos if you're interested. But the upshot of all of this is these things take massive amounts of power. They are not like running your laptop or something, right? They are whole orders of magnitude, many orders of magnitude higher energy usage in order to do all of that storage, all of the data transfer, all of the processing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They take massive amounts of power. So what are the consequences of that? Well, you've got the same thing as cryptocurrency mining, which is that eventually it starts to take so much power that the results you get, so you're using more and more and more power, and the results you're getting start to tail off, right? You get a lot of results for a little more power at the beginning of this curve, and then you get less and less and less. So it's a law of diminishing returns. You keep using more and more power, and you get less and less and less returns. So if eventually you're going to get to a point where it's just going to sort of flatten out, and you won't get more returns for the same amount of power. And yes, of course, you can put solar panels all over the place, and you can charge it with green energy, and that's wonderful. And I hope that everyone is doing that who's using all of this power. But Google and Facebook and Amazon and Apple and Tesla and so forth are using huge amounts of power to run the neural networks and to train the things that they're doing right now. So that's one big negative. Now, of course, as I said, you can do things like have solar panels or have wind farms. So you can construct things to make that power relatively green and to take it mostly off the grid and not burden the general grid to do this. So that, you might say, is like, okay, that's a problem, but it's overcomable. You can get over this problem. You can make it to where the energy usage can be arbitrary, and even if you're just getting little bits of incremental returns with a lot more power, as long as you're doing it green in a green way, who cares? And that's all right. So yeah, okay, so we can table that. That's one big issue, but there's a much bigger issue. And that issue is the reduction of democratization of these networks. And what I mean by that, and just the people that I was talking about before, we've got Apple, we've got Amazon, we've got Facebook, we've got Google, we've got Tesla. We've only got a handful of companies with the money to create these kind of institutional supercomputers that can actually train these things. They have to develop specialized chips, they have to come up with the power, they have to put these things together, they have to house them, they have to cool them. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. It's not like you or I, right? Normal people can go out and build something akin to this. And if you don't have access to this power, you don't have access to the cutting edge neural networks that are out there. So what's the difference between this and 2012? Well, in 2012, using standard GPUs, right? Stuff that you could buy from NVIDIA, everybody could buy it. Yeah, they were kind of expensive, right? I understand that. But a person could buy a few of these computers, they could put them together, you know, in a research laboratory in a university or even at home, and you could run this stuff and you could actually get results. And that's still possible in a small way. The business that I'm starting, we're only using a couple of computers and we're just, you know, basically doing it shoestring budget at this point. So you can learn relatively small projects, but the big projects that are going on, like learning full self-driving and learning to do incredible kinds of search and things like that, are becoming the purview of only the handful of, you know, the kind of less than 1% of companies or research institutions on the entire planet. And this, my friends, is terrible. What needs to happen is you need to have a broad base of people doing research in order to get creative solutions to things. What you want is this. You want a broad base of people researching, you know, 90%, 99% fail. They don't really come up with anything really interesting, but that 1% that comes up with something interesting is able to do it. And the more people that are playing in that field, the better. When you start to get a pyramid where only a very few companies at the very top can do the actual research, number one, you've got far fewer people who are involved in it, which means that you've got less chance for creative solutions. And that's a very bad thing. And number two, those companies that control these supercomputers and all of these techniques and everything are really the only ones who can do this really high level neural network training and machine learning training. And that means that they have a kind of monopolistic, or let's say oligarchic power over AI. And that is a terrible thing as well. So I'm not going to cast aspersions on Tesla at all here, but I want to use them as an example because their full self-driving is very public. And we do a lot of talking about this on the channel. So let's think about what Tesla has. Number one, they have approximately the fifth most powerful supercomputer for machine learning on the planet, and they're planning on having the most powerful one in about a year or so. Number two, they've got literal billions of miles that people have driven to give them data. Who else has this, right? Nobody else has the supercomputing power. Well, at least very few people do. Nobody else has this data. And then also they've got a team of the smartest people on the planet working on this. And they've got the power, of course, and things like that, and the money backing to be able to make this all happen. So what if I, or let's say George Hotz, who's running Comma AI, wants to step into this arena? It's the barrier to entry is so high that there's almost no way that any of us can do that. Even if I had a really good idea, I don't have the data, I don't have the money, I don't have the supercomputing power, and I don't have the backing to have a team of the world's, best AI people working on the project for literal years. So what we've got with full self-driving is, instead of this giant broad, arena where everyone can play, we've got this pyramid where only a very, very, very few companies can actually play in this, and pretty much no research institutions anymore can work in any kind of realistic way. They can work on small little segments of this, but a university, even with a large backing of a university and a National Science Foundation grant or something like that, just doesn't have anything like the data to start with in order to actually tackle a problem this big. So we're sort of reduced to only Tesla and maybe Mobileye, because they've got a lot of data also, but there's very, very few companies, and who knows, Apple has a lot of smart people working for it, but I don't think they have the data to make this all happen. So we're reduced to either one or a very small handful of companies that can actually do this, and that's to the detriment. I mean, I think it's great that Tesla's working on this, and I think it's fantastic, and clearly this is a really hard problem, and I'm glad somebody is tackling it in the way that it needs to be tackled. But it's also not a good thing that they're the only people that are able to do that. And that's a problem for the future of AI. So, okay, you might be like, all right, fine, that stuff is all bad. The power is bad. The fact that only a few companies are bad. But hey, we've got good companies that are doing that. I'm like, I don't know about Facebook, and who knows about Google also. But certainly we can, I at least feel like Tesla is doing this for the right reasons. And so, kudos to them for working on it. But there still is one more problem. And that problem is that we might seriously be reaching the limits of the current technology. So what really happened in those past booms, the 50s, 60s booms, the 80s into the early 90s boom, and then this one, is that we started off and we were like, oh, we've now got this technology that we can utilize. And then we wrote new algorithms and we beefed up the technology and did the best we could, and we got to the maximum that technology could do. And then we had to wait a decade or 15 years for the technology to catch up again so that we could actually make use of it again. And I have a fear that we're actually kind of, when you start talking about having to build new chips and have these massive supercomputer clusters in order to solve these problems, we're actually nearing the limits of what we can do with our current technology. And so we may need to actually stop. So let's say by like 2025 or so, it becomes kind of obvious that we've sort of just hit a wall. Then what happens, of course, is the public perception goes like, oh, AI is stupid again, that'll never actually solve this stuff. We're never going to have general artificial intelligence, blah, blah, blah. And what we need to do is wait 10 or 15 years till 2035, 2040 for the technology again to ramp up, and for all of these techniques that people were doing and trying at this time, like in the early 2020s, for it to actually come to fruition. So we might get into that boom bust cycle again. And that is the most intractable problem, because you can't get around the fact that you only have a certain amount of technology at this point, and you have to wait for it to increase and improve. So anyway, this all sounds like I'm kind of a doomsayer or something like that, and I'm telling everyone that there's no possibilities. I don't think that this boom bust cycle is going to be as radical, especially as the one in the 70s. That was like, people were just completely turned off about AI, thought it never had any future. It was a little less intense the last time in the late 90s into the 2000s, and I think this time it will be less intense also. I think that what we'll see is a retrenchment. So there will be this thing where we actually reach kind of the maximum we're capable of doing. I certainly hope, and I think that it's going to happen. I think Tesla will be able to solve level 5 full self-driving, but I'm not absolutely positive that they will be able to do that with our current technology. We will have to wait and see. I saw stuff, AI Driver was driving around, and by the way, if you haven't seen his videos, you should definitely check out his channel. But anyway, I've got a couple of screen captures here. It's amazing what these cars are doing now. They're doing like roundabouts, they're doing terrible traffic on hilly streets with cars parked on both sides. They're able to deal with pedestrians, with dogs, with deer running out into the road. So they're really dealing with more and more and more stuff, but the world is immensely complicated. And I don't know, I really think solidly that Tesla is going to get to level 4 autonomy, but I'm not absolutely convinced that they're going to be able to make level 5, where there never has to be an intervention and you don't even have to have a steering wheel in your car. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to reach the maximum amount of technology that we currently have, and we'll have to wait another 10 years for the tech to catch up. I certainly hope, and I do still think, that Tesla is going to achieve that level 5 autonomy, but I think that's basically going to max out our abilities right now, and we can't do anything more challenging than that. Although, of course, full self-driving in the real world is one of the most challenging things on the planet right now. But if you're waiting for general AI, for something to be like a robot, right, for the Tesla bot to be able to have a conversation with you and act just as a human being does, that's not going to happen anytime soon. Now, I do think the Tesla bot's going to exist, but it's going to be about as smart as your car is. And so that means it's going to be completely usable for a lot of different tasks, but it's not going to be something that is a human being just yet. I think we have to wait for the next wave. So I think we're looking at 2035, 2040 before we really have the technology in hand to be able to move to the next level and really start thinking about general AI. All right, so I will be interested to see what you all think. I have a feeling I'm going to have a lot of comments either agreeing with me or violently disagreeing. I'll be very interested to see what everybody thinks about this. Like I said, very much of a speculation episode, but these are just things that I'm starting to think about given the lie of the land right now. If you did enjoy the episode, definitely give it a thumbs up and also consider subscribing for more of this. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. You all are wonderful. I will be really interested to talk about this video on Discord. And if you're interested in joining the club, definitely check out the link in the description. And of course, don't forget about my lecture on Friday. You can check out the link in the description. You can click on that, you can get an invitation to it, and you can watch it if you're interested. And if you're interested in some awesome merch, check out the link in the description. We've got the Tesla Bot t-shirt, which is super popular these days. Don't mess with Tesla. Lots of other t-shirts, tumblers, mugs, etc. So check out the link in the description and help the channel out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out Webull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can click on the link and go shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon and help out the channel at the same time. And as always, feel free to ask me questions in the comments or at my email address, which is drknowitallknows@gmail.com. Till next time, bye-bye.